venture to get things going, and by your attendance and I'm sure your enthusiasms throughout the evening, and you want to just make it better for everyone. Which it's really, in many respects, it's an Eyewash event out of Eyewash. Eyewash is usually somewhere else in a different environment. It's not in a living room, it's in a real theater. So here we are, and there's Mark Williams, which is good. And the Howe Library sponsors this. This is the next to last Cine Salon program of this year, which next year will be the 20th program in the 20th year. And who knows what will happen after that? Maybe retire, just go away, and all that. So it's been a great year of things. And what the program is 2 weeks from now is pretty astounding if it's going to interest you. A woman by the name of Dickie Fifthpart, who comes out of the kind of conventional mainstream documentary film, and eventually about 20 years ago, got hired up at the in White River Junction at the VA hospital to be part of the government's Veterans Administration's crew of making documentaries. And what came out of all this was she was the point person for putting together a program to reach out to veterans for PTSD issues. And she has used every facility the government has given to her, and she's been able to conjure to put together this incredible, massive website that not only interviews people and explains and explicates different problems people have in different wars, different situations, different engagements with war and trauma, but then the different steps of bringing people around, to come back, and the kind of cures that can happen. So this is all interactive online, and she's going to come and explain her work. It's pretty astounding that that it exists and got done, and it's really up to Dickie's wherewithal here to put together. We also have the Hood Museum of Art, who's doing outreach programs for other museums, and what is it? Not transit. Not transit's there now.
It's getting there.
Yeah.
It's steel's going up.
Yeah.
It looks like something.
Right, okay, it's not done. But this is an outreach program, like, what's the word for it? Pop-up. Pop-up. Does that still exist, the pop-up? So we have to thank John for this. We have to thank Jody, hiding back there somewhere in the room, for coming and doing all this. Are we on? Did we get on? So what we're waiting for is we're trying. Saul has lately been. I'm going to go backwards.
We're live here.
So my computer down
And
here.
you maybe need to.
Can you refresh my page?
Yep.
That might be it.
That's what I was doing.
Saul has recently embraced, or is it on Mass Arts page, has embraced live Facebook, like all of us. And I realized after watching a couple of his things, he was shooting.
There you go.
All right, okay. That's perfect, sideways too. Right?
Woo!
Let's see, do the full screen too. Hello, Facebook, right? So we thought we'd fool around with this because I know at some point, because Saul is literally holding the camera. Okay, good.
Now Jody's holding the camera.
And we're delayed, right? There's a delay, right? Yes, it's about 6, 7 seconds. Okay, cool. So our feedback loop started. Anyway, the Hood Museum of Art, Jody and I watched the film. Something Media Studies Ecology program over at Dartmouth College, and Mark Williams representing that tonight, right? Yes. We just came out of this really incredible. I'm going to be as quick as I can. We came out of a pretty phenomenal conference this weekend where a group of German, Austrian, and American mainstream and off-stream film critics, curators, writers, archivists came together for the weekend. It was really a pretty astounding weekend. But unfortunately, the tenor of the weekend, after 2 days of moving where it was going, really, and this is mainly, we're talking about mainstream critics. We had some people from Time, Time, on Time Magazine, Village Voice, we had top-notch folks talking. But the talk came back to the center line of cinema history, to being the feature film, almost in many respects the commercial feature film. And to me, that's sort of disturbing because we're in 2017. We're so far beyond that. Any of the students here tonight that are involved in making experimental or outside works know that you can do anything now. We're doing it. I mean, that's what this is about, doing the Facebook. But who knows where Saul will go with this? And actually, Jody's holding the camera. So you see what I mean? This is today. What we're doing in this room, and what I've always wanted this room to do, is because we're all
pretty good.
I think it's because it's zoomed into the
all is feedback.
Yeah.
So tonight what we have as if the great Japanese director Ozu had arrived in town. And I compare Saul in many respects to the work of Ozu. And any of you that know this man's work which is kind of the late 30s to the 60s, I guess, about me dying, was he had a very definitive vision of what cinema is, and that was pretty much the camera being situated almost in a really rigid rectangle. And that rectangle being the opposite of what was just happening here. I mean, being dead still. And then the perspective of that the camera being about here, shooting a little bit up at people with things centered in space. And all the events of narrative happen within this extremely static visual space that was like on Renaissance perspective, but whacked by being at that weird angle. And then the time aspect. And why put Saul in here? Because you're going to see in 2 seconds of Saul's films, there's a different thing happening with Saul. Saul's films, the movement and vibration of time is happening related to his body interaction. And why this is nutty today, we go to a conference and listen to mainstream people talking about the regular cinema, is that, one, it's not cinema anymore, it's digital, which is a whole different format of physiological engagement and transposition. The second thing is that film is static images being thrown out 24 frames a second, or in tonight's case, a lot of them are 18 frames a second. But it's a distinct effect is doing that to you. And so you don't have to have, because you can control each frame related back to the maker. I'm only saying this because, to give you 2 more seconds before Saul, is we had a great person here last year that was involved with us for about a year, an architect of local ilk, that came to the screens religiously for about a year and a half. And eventually she bailed, and she said the reason was, besides my ridiculous talks, was this issue of we were confronting you with this 24 frames a second stuff all the time. And she said, why can't they do it differently? And again, in 2017, this is a crazy comment. We're living in different times, we have different backgrounds. So with that, blah, 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 I'm going to introduce Saul Levine, who is probably one of the greatest exponents of radical, in the deepest sense of the word, cinema in the United States. One of his biggest supporters is the author, the great P.M. Sidney, who's written recently a really great piece called Quotidian Lyrics. Is that the name of the piece? Saul, yeah. And that sort of defines the turf that Saul's in. So if you can find this piece online, please do. But you don't need to, because you have Saul here tonight with 80 minutes of film, and you can talk with Saul. Saul, would you please? Thank you.
So that's part of P.M. Sidney's latest, not latest book, the 3rd edition of Visionary Film. He I think correctly decides that, says that what has been termed the diary film is incorrectly, or autobiographical diary film is incorrectly labeled. And I always felt that about my work, that people would say my work is diaristic, and I would always say it isn't. There are huge areas of my life that I never deal with, and I'm not faithful to my life in a daily way in film, which is what would be implied by the term diary. On the other end, what is true is that I've always, for the most part, represented the world around me directly. So partly because as I went on, there became to be a lot of contention and thought about what's permissible in terms of culture representation. So I, for the most part, have just stuck to whatever is around me. Now you're going to see one of the first films we're going to watch is going to contradict what I just said, because it's a film made out of Charlie Chaplin films and a demonstration I had gone to. So, but in that case, that is in fact a film. It's called The Big Stick. It's the one that has Charlie Chaplin in it. Most of my films aren't going to have titles on the film, so this is going to be a little confusing. But The Big Stick is that one. And I was trying to find it. I was, like many people my age, I was born in the Second World War and came of age during the Vietnam War, and was, like everyone, the big crisis in my life when I was 20 was what to do about that. So, and also I had been an abused child and had lived, it's always a little misleading to say, had grown up around a lot of violence. So the issue of violence, both domestic and international, national and international, was a lot on my mind. But as a personal issue. So The Big Stick is really my trying to deal using images drawn from Charlie Chaplin films, trying to deal with the issues of anger and repression and when it's permissible and not. Anyway, okay. When I started to make films, a lot of people, my generation of filmmakers believed, I have this conceit that they believed. Actually, it may only have been a couple of us, but for us, films themselves are the theory. People who write about stuff, that's all very nice. And people who write film history, that's even better. But actually, film theory is one film speaking to another. So, I am now going to shut up. So, to live up to that idea, because the main thing is not what I have to say. It's, if you want to know, if you even want to know, how are you, Saul? You should see my latest films. Because you're not really going to get it from my words. Now, the other thing my generation believed is that watching a film was not, you sit here, you open up your eyes, and the light bounces into them, and that's it. There's a little screen in your head. Watching a film is an act. It's work. You are now, I've made the film. And some of these films I made 50 years ago. I'm not the same person. You will complete all of these films. Or not. Or you'll leave. But what I'm saying is, however much effort you put into watching will be your reward, will be seeing the film. You are the last actors in the making of this film. Your apprehension. So, please do my films justice. in this program, we'll actually be seeing 50 years work from a span of 50 years. Does anyone want to say anything or ask anything? We're partly doing this to deal with the bowl. I would just keep having you watch films, but does anyone have anything? Any burning questions? You're right to like think that what I say doesn't matter.
It's kind of a geeky question, but these are clearly analog production methods. Did you have just multiple prints of your footage, and then you would blend them together, or what was your process?
You mean in which film?
Well, I guess certainly these are different, but the Chaplin film.
Yeah.
But then the most recent, the one we just saw too.
Yeah. These were all made in an analog way. So the Chaplin film is a good question. I had started, I had made that movie that you see at the beginning. And I had made it for a piece I was doing with a group of poets and dancers and musicians. In fact, oddly, I was a little so I had, when I would show that loop to people, because it's a Chaplin film, people found it hilarious. Which it is. I mean, Chaplin is a great physical comic and a great filmmaker. But what I was interested in the loop wasn't its comedy. And so I had the loop printed. I think I went analog. There wasn't any other way to go there. So I had that printed, and I thought I would do theme and variation kind of thing. I'd be like the kind of film Bach, if I were to be really inflated. You know, I knew I wasn't going to be Bach, but so I played around, but that wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. I mean, I actually did that. I usually say this film was in '68, but I actually made the loop in '67. As I was working, I didn't want to make a film. In '68, I had gone to this demonstration. I was married then. The woman I was married to and I were part of that demonstration. You see people being arrested and beaten. We weren't arrested. We weren't beaten. And I shot that off of TV because I didn't have my camera. I wanted to make a film in which Chaplin wasn't only, the Chaplin figure wasn't only the victim. And I remembered I had seen a film where Chaplin was a cop. There were two, actually. One is called Police and the other is Easy Street. I went to this big department store in New York, blocking the name. It was a film department store. It was about 10 stories high. And in the basement, you could buy old films. You could buy films for a slug, if anyone knows what that is. And you could buy copies of, so they also sold books. So I went and I looked up Chaplin and found the picture of him in a uniform. I have since come to know Chaplin's work very well, but I didn't know it then. I mean, I actually was fortunate to study the work of Chaplin with Stan Brakhage. So anyway, I bought a complete regular 8 copy, because I'm working in regular 8 of the film Easy Street. I also picked up, later on, I picked up another copy of this film In the Park that I had started, that the loop is drawn from. But I already had more of that footage. So I was dealing with reproduction and loop forms, but I was dealing with them completely in analog. Because guess if it wasn't it wasn't any digital. I mean, you could, if there had been, the big stick could have been 3 or 4 hours long. Are you lucky?
That's great.
Yeah.
Did Brecht mean anything to you at this time?
What?
Did Bertolt Brecht mean anything to you at this
Yeah,
time?
I had studied, I was an English major in college, and I had studied Brecht. I had studied Ball in one of his first expressionist things, and as an undergraduate, my friends and I listened over and over again to Mahagoni. We loved that, the record that has La de Linea. There's one recording of Mahagoni that's magnificent, that has the original probably cast in it. We listened to Mac the Knife, you know, that stuff, Three Penny Opera. And I had read Brecht's poems. I particularly liked the poem he wrote for political reasons. He wrote the East German workers demonstrated against the government for something, and the party said, the party put out a statement that they were a terrible working class. So Bertolt Brecht wrote a poem. Maybe the German Communist Party should find the proletariat that deserves them. I'm a big fan. I'm a fan of Brecht, but not only Brecht.
Right.
But was there a reason you asked?
You show your splices
Yeah.
prominently. You show your splices prominently.
Yeah. I got that from Marie Mencken, but I think you're right. Brecht would have understood that gesture and also understood its connection with labor, with the act of production. So are we ready?
Yes,
Maybe
we are.
we should just go on.
Okay.
Response or comments? Oh, he's talking. Just keep talking.
Oh, I just have a question. What was like the intention behind kind of like shaking the camera?
I was born in television. My connection is Johnson. It's a big problem because people, especially but grew up on they've attributed my affect. I have a lot of issues of motor control, so I always had very bad speech problems. I don't have good control over the volume of my voice, and people often think I'm angry or I'm indecipherable. So the tremors, but I decided I could um, I want to show that people, I actually, my tremors are the most common brain disorder of, that all humans have. So, I make films with shaky hands for those people, for my brothers and sisters who go through life. So, people attributing nervousness and meth freaks and everything else to that. But I also, I'm a huge fan of Marie Menken. And Marie Menken is the person who made the moving camera not just going from one place to the other, but a way of shaping light and drawing with light. I'm not Marie Menken. I'm like kind of, I do the best I can, but I draw inspiration from them.
Can I have a comment on that?
Yeah.
Because to me, it really puts the body of the artist right forefront, and it's. I was thinking tonight, it reminds me of Rodin's thumbs. No matter where you go on a sculpture, you can't miss the mark of the artist, and that's really your physical presence in there, and it reasserts that. And all night long, we only had that one stationary shot when you were editing, in the film with May. None of that. The artist was right in there, and I thought that was beautifully reinforced. It became a kind of leitmotif throughout the night.
Also, the fingerprints in
Yeah.
the star film
Yeah.
are the, I love, see how narcissistic I am, I get myself all over.
And it was interesting to bounce back on that just quickly. With the other fingerprint was the different film stocks and mediums.
Yeah.
Working there. So when Super 8 was happening with Super 8 imprints, and regular 8 was the digital.
I didn't set out necessarily, but my work usually has a big reflexive media component. Not only film, but you see, I use images of TV, the radio. I'm very involved in that kind of thing.
I'll try to have what I'm thinking of put together. I'm not sure how it'll come out. But at the beginning, when I was seeing your film, The Loop, and some other things as visual poetry, but not, in that non-traditional way. So, and then coming back and then hearing you talk about how you want to know how you are in your films, and that's your expression, not what you say. My visual, one of my issues, I'm not able to process your film, so mostly I have to close my eyes or try to look with one but I was playing with it. I didn't leave, I wanted to see what I could get out of it. And so I'm seeing your work through shadows, and light and color, and occasionally I would try to skim it by looking. I don't know, I'm just saying how I was able to experience.
What is it, the flicker that is disturbing to you?
A movement, I guess it's.
Do you get vertigo?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so occasionally I would walk out of a, Hollywood film, because I'll get nauseous.
Yeah.
But I want to be part of it.
Thank you for staying.
Yeah, but it's fascinating, and trying to, what's my process, and when I'm not doing your work when you want me to.
No, I don't have I don't have a particular way. I mean, it's all good for me.
So I'm pleased, and yeah, here it.
So how was it? Was it okay?
It was fascinating.
Good, good.
My interior world meshing with what you were evoking. It was very interesting.
I mean, I'm very. You can see, especially in the light licks, which is the last one. The last one is called Light Licks by the Water of Babylon. I want to paint it black.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, especially in the light works, trying to represent that which is unphotographical, but we still see. Or,
So maybe that is what I saw. but-
yeah, no, you're not far off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the man who told the jokes in Yiddish,
My uncle, Uncle
Oh.
Red.
okay. So, did he have anything himself to atone for?
What? Oh, he was
selling a
dying.
gun? Okay,
He had both congestive heart failure and as well as cancer.
yeah.
The doctors had told him 2 years before that he wouldn't live, you know, he would only live a couple of weeks.
And who was the woman?
He broke into. Let's go.
I don't know.
I don't know, I
You
guess
should
we're
turn
not,
the
we're
sound
not
off.
live, are we?
Yeah, you should turn the sound off.
Did you hit live?
Yeah, you have to hit live to make it go live, sorry.
Yeah. What's happening is we're hearing the last thing.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. But it's very fascinating, your body movements and the movements are like this weird mirror.
Yeah, I know.
Try it again.
So,
No, still not there.
he I had wanted him to tell these jokes anyway. I didn't know how bad his condition was. My brother and I, after this, I live in New Haven or Hampton, we drove him up to the Springfield airport. He was flying out from there. He after he did this thing, he cried.
Oh, there you go.
Sure.
So I can't answer for him whether he had anything to atone for.
Right.
Don't we all? Or not. I mean, he was a great guy in a lot of ways. Very, you know, and someone who was great to me. But why did you? What were you wondering?
He was telling a Yom Kippur joke.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. I had always remembered him telling this joke. And I wanted to have both of these jokes, even if you can translate them. If you've never fasted on Yom Kippur, this joke, or if you're not with it, I was trying in this film to deal with some of the possibilities and impossibilities of translation
Right.
and of culture. So even though he's speaking a very like kind of English Yiddish, you can it's still. And if I explain the jokes, it's still not funny.
Right.
Unless,
But it juxtaposes two cultures where slavery is a big part of their history.
yeah, yes.
The blues culture and the Jewish culture.
Yes, yeah. It's yeah. That wasn't very much in my consciousness, but you can read it that way, sure. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
That same film, while the audio is doing what it's doing, the visuals are doing this, I guess it's based on the table and your editing reels. There's that solidness to that shape. And then everything else is cracking away from it and back, which was real interesting because each of the films had that. I mean, you know, the business of Chaplin with the, not Chaplin, but the other person with the stick, and the stick was matching the editing splices as a movement. So the same things were happening in the Groove to Groove in the same way. And would you say that, I mean, because audio is a big part of that film, is it a riff that you're seeking in the editing and audio structure, or is it something else? I mean, because the music was kind of throwing it back, and the guys playing would give you this idea that you were maybe making your own music, whatever it might be. So was there a musicology to the whole thing in your mind at the end, or was it visual?
Well, in Groove to Groove,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, there's a personal dimension to that film in that when I'm editing that, I mean, that, we were talking, when I came up here, we were talking about Dan Barnett.
Yeah.
Dan Barnett had hired me. Those big blue things, the footage, he had gone on a trip to China and shot Super 8 film. You might remember this. And he came back with about 1,000 feet of Super 8 film that filled that big blue reel. Now I have to admit, I found another, the blue reels are a little bit my mise en scène.
Yeah, you're blue.
Yeah, they were not accidental, right? Nor is my red shirt.
Yeah.
I had a longtime friend who I first met. Her name was Marcia Kramer. I was her roommate out in San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco for about a year. And we remained long friends. I had met her before I had gone out there. I don't want to go into that story. But we were very, very good friends who finally became lovers. And I had moved in with her. When I moved back to Boston in '78, it was partly to live with her, and she had changed her name to May. She was, and she's unfortunately passed on. She died very young of cancer, breast cancer. So she's the blues person. That's her, when I'm editing, that's her show in the background. Now, at the time I'm editing this, she had fallen in love with someone else. The guy who's the lead guitar in this blues band. There were actually 2 lead guitars in this blues band. He's not the guy that you see like this. If anyone remembers, he's more like this. And Bay is in fact one of the figures dancing. And that's very much her apartment. At the time I made this film of the editing, I knew I was on my way out. She essentially had thrown me out, but I was kind of living there. She had already, the story is kind of silly and she May stopped coming. Both of us led very nocturnal lives. So that May didn't come back a couple of times that night, didn't think anything of it. I said, hey May, where were you? She said, I was playing cards, poker. So I said, great. can I film that? I always wanted, because I used to be a compulsive dancer, gambler. I said, can I come over and film that? And I got a strange look. She didn't seem very enthusiastic about it. Because I knew all those guys, all the people in the band. And then, by the time I was editing this thing, and I had always wanted to use that mask, this great mask I think she brought back from Mexico. So I had Mark Lepore shot the footage of my jumping across the kitchen. And then I used the mask in the editing and the white gloves. So, but I'm also very involved in this formal interplay of dancing with myself, because you can see myself in the mandala things, you see my reflection. So there are times where you can see me back here, there, and editing. It's, it's like and some people, of course, imagine, although this would be impossible, that the cutting they're seeing on the film is what I'm doing here. But it is the process, cement splicing, Bolex splicer, So I wanted to get all of that in, but it's this is really a blues.
Yeah, it's approaching a language
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, I mean, when May that morning, the morning after I shot this, her showing at this time was from like 11 o'clock to 6 in the morning. And it's a blues show, so the next morning she said, Saul, when I played those songs, they may have seemed like they were referring to you and I, but they weren't. I said, I know, May, it's a blues. Got it. I knew what she was talking about. But there's that, But you wouldn't have to know all the story to see this film, right? I didn't make this film about my own personal dilemma, or wouldn't have thrown in my uncle and aunt and stuff like that. It's formally a broader thing.
Yeah, so I'm curious about the driving videos that you did, and how you chose the people that you rode with, and particularly that young man. Is he a friend, or did you hear of him from someone else?
It turns out a lot of people I know this guy.
Huh.
But I met him independently. I was at the Harvard Archive at a Harmony Korine show. They were doing a Harmony Korine retrospective. So he sat down next to me and we got into a discussion about Harmony Korine's film and why I think Kids sucks, for example, right? And he wrote the script for it, and which are the good and we both had seen a lot of Harmony Korine and what each of us thought about it. And in the course of that, he told me the story of being in love with this woman in his dreams, and that he was faithful. He didn't go as elaborately as he told in this. So I said, would you say that on camera? I didn't actually intend to, because I had very bad speech problems, I'm very interested in how people look when they talk. So for me, it's a part of portraiture is how people speak. I don't care, in some ways, I don't care what comes out too much. So it took about 2 years to actually get him in front of a camera. I would see him on and off, or I would run into him, and I'd say, hey, why don't we do, you know? And also, he imagined we were gonna do this in some living room kind of setting, you know, like that. And I'm a filmmaker, so I want to have a visual dynamic. So I had thought of different, and then he gave me a ride in his truck or in the car, and I saw this rose thing. So I said, why don't we do, we had a couple of failed attempts. I said, why don't we do it in your car? You know, and do it as a kind of, you know, driving around thing. One of my first, I mean, I've always been into this. One of my first films, which I made with someone else, was called Happy Motoring. And it was a couple riding around. It was a little anecdotal film. So, I mean, I'm always interested. My father owned a gas station. I worked in it. You know, I now don't drive. I haven't driven in almost 30 years. So, no, more than 30 years, about 35 years. I drove a couple of times, but because I re-got my license. I lost my license. It just, so that, I didn't necessarily intend this to be a driving around one. And this is in particular, I usually am not so much going after someone to say something in particular. Although I sometimes do. Another film that's kind of in this kind of day series is a friend of mine that I filmed who's a singer, singing, which I like very much. She's called Just One of Those Things, because she does kind of standards, American standards, and she does just one of those things.
So maybe it should be made clear that you started videoing people at night driving around Boston, but long takes, like hour and a half, 2 hour long takes.
Yeah, 82 minutes.
Yeah, similar to what we saw at night. And that,
Yeah.
this is an outshoot of, you've been doing it, what, 10 years or something,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
A long
yeah.
time.
Yeah. I'm, you know, that's my sort of more minimalist side. People say my work is, in terms of cuts, they're either lots of very quick cuts or no, very long takes.
What's the 82 minutes?
Why 82 minutes? Good question. Because that's the longest mini DV tape you could buy. I would have done longer, you know, or maybe not. I mean that was a convenient length, you know. I ran into James Benning, he had always used 100-foot, 16 millimeter as a measure. So then, when he switched to digital, he had to find another measure. So for a while, his first idea was to do cigarettes.
too short.
Well, yeah, I haven't seen that work, but, you know, I don't know what I would do, whether, I haven't solved the problem of what would be, whether if I switch to HD or beyond for something like 4K, what would I use as a measure? I'm not sure. I like the arbitrary thing because in the drivens, I don't tell people. I say anything you say is okay. Secretly, I'm lying. Secretly, I'm hoping they're gonna talk more about something interesting. The worst thing is when people talk about driving around. Oh, which street this has traffic, you know, who cares? But in the drivens, what works is it's like psychoanalysis. If I can keep my mouth shut, which I often can't, then people fill in the gaps, their anxiety. Except the people who really are good at hiding. There are people who, the interest in the tape is they're withholding. They don't, you know. And they're usually other filmmakers.
That's good.
So I just wanted to first of all thank Bruce, Jody, John, Richard, all the people who brought me here, helped make this show happen, possible. And said the last film belongs to a series. I tend to work in series. So the first film, besides the big stick that we saw, were Notes, which I started that series around the Lost Note and Note to Hero, go back with some footage to 65, 67, 68. I'm still making notes. They're just a series where I decided to explore the possibility of making notes in film, whatever that means, which it means a lot of things. Then in the Light Licks, which is the last one, this is a series I started about in the late, right around the beginning of the 21st century or the end of the 20th. I started the Light Licks and the Drivens almost at the same time, and that really has to do with the crisis of film disappearing. Photochemical film disappearing. So the Light Licks and the Light Licks reversal film is now precious. It's hardly made. There are a couple of people, they're making it in Germany and Italy in an artisanal way. The people who've bought Kodak keep promising they're going to bring it back, but so far all they got is still reversal film. So the Light Licks, since I bought a bunch of reversal film before it went out. I don't shoot reversal Super 8 to like go to like a little kid's birthday party and just memorialize that. I tried like in the Light Licks to shoot it in ways that you can only do it on film. So the Light Licks have three things going on. First of all, what I just said, because you can't make you can't make this kind of digital flicker film. I'm also interested from the very beginning in flicker films. Because the flicker rates of flicker are a way of altering consciousness itself, because you're acting on the central nervous system through the eyes. The eyes are directly connected to the central nervous system. I've always been interested in the idea of how film can be like music, can be like improvised music. Because I like jazz, I like many, many forms of improvised music. There are limitations. You can say, well, those are musicians playing together, there are set forms, and all like that. I'll admit, film is very resistant to spontaneity and to improvisation. It's really a kind of rigid, preconceived media. I happen to be not good at that, so I like to think about how do I to foreground that thing of being on the spot. I made a film called On the Spot, in which, you're just out there and you have to do something and put it together. And so that's, the light licks have that going for them. The other thing is what I started to talk about before, is the unphotographable. As a hobby, I'm very much an atheist. I'm not very much of a secular person. I don't. But unusually, I have visions. I see things. I see things that are unphotographable. Sometimes I see them in here, sometimes I see them out there. And so I love reading the accounts of other visionaries, especially people who are mystics. And although since I was brought up in traditional Judaism, I know there's a whole thing there's a whole suppression of the visual experience, although it's alluded to in this regard. One of the famous rabbis of the Middle Ages said that Daniel and Ezekiel were blabbermouths, because they had a vision. They had a vision of God, but the important thing for Rashi was not the vision, but what God said to them. They reported also what they saw. And this is very much not good. And also very scary. I mean, anytime, it's not quite true that people say God is in the Bible. It's not that you can't see God. It's that if you do, you probably will die immediately. It's when Moses gets to the burning bush, he hears a voice that more or less says, "Hey, Watch it. This is scary. Take off your shoes. Don't look. You think but it's not that you can't see. It's that what you see is terrifying. So, all that aside, so at the beginning of, say, for example, you can, if you wanted to literalize that, the last film, you could see that beginning as someone moving through their mind to a vision. That first you have these, has anyone, I mean, I'm not, Stan Brakhage and Jordan Belson really made documents of this kind of experience. I'm not that good. I don't remember that clearly, and I'm just drawing on that kind of experience and accounts of that kind of experience it informs or inspires my film, but they're not, these are not like documents or reliving that experience at all. They're in a way my pointing to, just as if I took a picture here, that people would say, oh, that's a real person. For me, those images reflect an interior reality as well, just as much.
There's a really funny piece of paper I found the other day of when Brakhage came back here in '67 to show, actually showed 23rd Song Branch. But the reason he came back, besides that and a gig, was he wanted to finally face up to the nervous breakdown that he had when he was here.
Oh, right.
And so in the Dartmouth paper, of his review of him being here on campus, they eventually ended up in the dining hall with him. And this impacting what you're saying. I mean, he went around to the place where he had nervous breakdown, his dorm, this and that. But in the dining hall area, which, what do you guys call it, Collis, or whatever it's called, they were saying, well, why aren't you photographing all the students? Because he was busy photographing their shadows on the wall in the dining room, when in fact there were hundreds of people behind him. And he said, well, that's what's important. And Jane was there. This is what he's trying to articulate, a literalness of this shape.
Did he re-photograph him breaking the glasses?
I don't know. I just scanned this amongst hundreds of things I'm looking at now. And I mean reading it, scanning it. And it was like just that stuck in my head. It's so Stan. And the other thing was everybody was, upset about 23rd Song Branch. They said it was 12 hours long, 16 hours long. The time was displaced so much.
Yeah, it's not. It's the length of it. You and I know it's about the length of the feature.
Yeah.
I love that film.
Yeah.
I love that film. My friends and I, boy, that was it. I mean, the 23rd Song Branch, what a great film.
But it's somewhat similar to Light Licks, when you were photographing those statues and the building in the distance. What town is that? Is that Prague?
Yeah, it's Prague. I was very phobic. I'll tell you, Brakhage haunted that film in this way. I think in the 27th film, as one of the fallouts of My Mountain is his trip to East Berlin, where he said it came out very dark, and he said, and he was trying to say it was the darkness of East Germany, and Bruce Cotter said, Stan, you just kept pointing your camera in the dark. But I was phobic about going to Central Europe because I was a child I was born in '43. I remember when I was 4 and 5 seeing people with tattoos on their arm and knowing what that meant was, I knew. And so I've always been, I was phobic about going to Central Europe. What could I say? I never, other people would say, don't you want to go to Europe? And I would say, no. No. No, I mean, and I also had a sense, I like this Brazilian filmmaker, Ana Vaz, because she and I both have a kind of prejudice about Europe, that it's the old world. And that a lot of the bad things come from there. So, I mean, I was just mentioning today, I think, to Richard or someone, I really love, I mean, I celebrate 4th of July. I am so happy not to be a British subject.
Does anyone want to add anything? Because it's late and this has been incredible, but still, it's.
Well, thank you for your stamina. Everything you saw tonight is on video. So you could, if you happen to want to see this, or you hated all of this stuff, I have other films. You might like some of them more.
Thank you, Saul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well,
That's right.